Friends, welcome again to my new episode. And I wish to present before you the worst and famous 30 ports of the world. The first one is Crack des Jewelries, Syria, built by the Hospitaller Order of St. John of Jerusalem, served from 1942 to 1271. The Crusader Castle in Syria, and it is famous for UNESCO's World Heritage Site. It stands as one of the most preserved examples of fortification from the era. Perched on a high ridge, the fortress has both a defensive and attacking mindset that helped keep it safe from would-be pursuers. Next one is Edwards Air Force Base, California. It is more known for the equipment that is housed and tested at the site. Edwards Air Force Base debuted America's first jet, the Bell P-59, in 1942. The first time an aircraft broke the sound barrier was at Edwards, now home to the Air Force Flight Test Center and NASA's Dryden Flight Research Center. The base's sheer size and location to a large salt flat that can naturally extend runways offer help that has lasted throughout decades. The fortress of Suomenlinna, Finland. It is with over 200 buildings and nearly 4 miles of wall over 6 different islands. The fortress was built originally in the second half of the 18th century by Sweden on islands at the entrance to Helsinki's harbor. Having protected Sweden, Russia, and now Finland, the fortress uses local rock and a system of bastions over the varied terrain. Serving as a garrison and a harbor, the site was used by the military until 1973. Now it houses private and public apartments and workspaces. Fortress of the Ursini, Italy. It is the towering walls of the fortress of the Ursini further accentuates the fact that the fort uses a cliff as its main protector. Constructed in the 14th century and renovated a century later, the site has 5 underground levels to help Italians move through the site undetected and secure. With cisterns to collect rainwater and its own windmill, the fortress withstood multiple attempts on its destruction. Masada, Israel. It is located on a plateau overlooking the Dead Sea on the edge of the Judean desert. The strategic location created an isolated outpost that Herod the Great built around 31 BC. Constructed as a safe haven in case of revolt, the site also included 2 palaces. While a fortress for centuries, the last known use of the site was that of a church. Joint Defence Space Research Facility, Pine Gap, Australia. Australia and the US combined on Pine Gap's research facility in the center of Australia outside of Alice Springs. Opened in 1970, the intensely remote location not only made construction difficult but allows the facility to monitor the region in near complete anonymity due to the desolation that surrounds it. Raven Rock Mountain Complex, Pennsylvania. Built under Raven Rock Mountain near the border of Pennsylvania and Maryland. The Cold War gave rise to a site that has been dubbed Site or secrecy often clouded the location. Meant to facilitate the continuity of operation plan to keep the government moving forward amidst major catastrophe. With that, the secrecy and location give Site R its own aura. Thule Air Base, Greenland, located within 800 miles of the Arctic Circle. Major supplies must get shipped to the US northernmost installation during a 3-month summer window. While not only hard to get to, the base operates the 12th Space Warning Squadron, an early warning system for intercontinental ballistic missiles. Thule also handles space surveillance. The Western legend, Gibraltar. The legendary geography at the Rock of Gibraltar includes its sheer cliff face, difficult western slope, and location at the southern tip of Europe, adjacent to the Strait of Gibraltar. Britain took advantage of this by enhancing medieval structures here, arming and fortifying the top of the rock in the 16th century. Centuries of improvements, including carving tunnels into the rock for armaments, troop movement, and storage, helped Britain to withstand siege attempts. Today, the land is still technically a British overseas territory. Cheyenne Mountain Complex, Colorado, home of NORAD, which monitors pretty much everything in North American airspace. The Cheyenne Mountain Complex uses the mountains around Colorado Springs as fortification. Sitting inside a hollowed out space in the mountains, the air defense system reached the height of its majestic during the Cold War when it opened in 1967. Its 25-ton blast doors are embedded within the 1700 feet of granite. After a complete remodel, the buried site reopened for business in 2008. Chittorgarh Fort, the largest fort in India, covered 700 acres atop of 590-foot tall hill, complete with towers and walls that have stood since the Maurya Empire built it near the Indian city of Udaipur in the 7th century. Fort Chittorgarh, also dubbed the Fort of Chittor, has 1 mile long twisty road leading to it with 7 gateways guarded by a watchtower and iron spiked doors. While only 22 of the original 84 bodies of water within the fort still exist, 40% of the fort's space was covered by water. At one time, enough of a reservoir to hold about 1 billion gallons of water, and with rainfall, enough to maintain an army of 50,000 for 4 years without fear of thirst. The greatest and the oldest and largest still inhabited castle in the world, Windsor Castle, has been home to British royalty for almost 1000 years. Now the official residence of Queen Elizabeth II. The castle was built by William the Conqueror in 1070 as a strategic stronghold along the river Thames, guarding the western approach to London high above the river. The stone fortifications were added along the way, allowing the castle, which became a military headquarters building, to withstand multiple battles. Windsor remains a working royal palace, made popular as a royal hunting ground that's close to the capital. Fort Jefferson, Florida Keys, one of America's largest masonry-built buildings, was designed in the mid-1800s to ward off pirates from the Gulf of Mexico shipping lanes. Located on Garden Key Way out in the Florida Keys, past Key West, Fort Jefferson is made of more than 16 million bricks. It was a massive upgrade from the lighthouse that originally stood on this spot. The fort was in active use through the Civil War, mainly to house prisoners, but its thick walls weren't as impressive by the late 1800s and it was abandoned as a fort. The structure was never fully finished, but the 6-sided fort covers 11 of the 16 acres of land on the key and remains a tourist destination. Prague Castle, Czech Republic. It is built around 880 by Prince Brujoj of the Princely dynasty. Prague Castle stands as the largest coherent castle complex in the world at more than 753,000 square feet. Among its structures, you will find palaces and buildings from the Romanesque styles of the 10th century and Gothic architecture from the 14th century. Inside the castle, the St. Vitus Cathedral and St. George Basilica give this massive fortress extra cultural appeal. Prague Castle has earned its status as an iconic fortress, as wars in the 1600s inflicted major damage upon the structure. B-17 Flying Fortress US. We just couldn't ignore something with Flying Fortress as the nickname, could we? The Boeing created 4-engine heavy bomber debuted with the US Army aircraft in 1935 as a new plane loaded with machine gun mounts and bombing capabilities. The B-17 was designed as a low-wing monoplane with aerodynamic features derived from the XB-15, and the amount of guns, bombs, and heft it carried increased with each model. Stories exist from World War II of pilots flying the plane home with up to 600 black holes. The Marlborough Castle, Poland. The Teutonic Order, a Catholic religious group founded as a military order, constructed the world's largest brick castle in Poland on the bank of the river Nogat in 1406. Now designated a UNESCO World Heritage Site, the fortified monastery, following multiple conservation efforts, stands as the world's largest castle measured by surface area. The Gothic style brick walls surrounding the castle too little to hide the magnificent visual appeal of the castle's rising interior. USS Nimitz, deployed in 1975, the USS Nimitz, which would become the namesake for an entire class of aircraft carriers, ran 1092 feet long with a flight deck of 252 feet. The supercarrier could cruise at more than 30 knots, just over 34 miles per hour, with the ability to hold more than 5,000 service members and 60 aircraft. The nuclear-powered floating fortress soon became the hallmark for the US Navy, with a total of 10 Nimitz-class carriers that are still in service as the Navy's largest vessels. Fort Knox, the US effort to build new military installations after World War I led to the start of Fort Knox in 1918. Over years, the security and fortification has continued to increase, especially as the fort became home to the United States Bullion Depository, home of the largest portion of the country's official gold reserves. That security starts with an open field and includes layers of granite, concrete, and steel barriers. And that's before you even got a ship that was built to withstand atomic bombs. Add in the presence of the US Army, digital and visual surveillance, and the potential for every high-tech form of defense imaginable. There are fun rumors of flooding tunnels, and you get America's most secure ship. Of course, nobody really knows how much gold or valuables of all sorts is located within the bowels of Fort Knox. That is the Fort Sumter, South Carolina. Following the War of 1812, the US Army decided that the port city of Charleston, South Carolina, needed a stronger defense against the threat of naval attack, leading the 1830 construction of Fort Sumter. Located on a small rocky island in the center of Charleston Harbor, the 70,000-ton granite fort included a multi-tiered battery of artillery. Later, Fort Sumter would earn iconic status as the site of the first shots of the American Civil War. Confederates gained control of the fort early on, and after rebuilding it for their own uses, were able to fend off the Union Army here throughout the war. The Alamo, Texas. Let's be clear. The Alamo was built as a Roman Catholic mission, not a fort, but the limestone structure became a fortification and a legend in the mind of Texans when it became a defensive structure during an attack by Santa Anna and his army in 1836. While the chapel stands as the largest structure on site, this 4-acre complex includes limestones and adobe structures used by the Texans when the Mexican army bombarded them, giving us the remember of the Alamo battle cry. Section Bastille, Germany. Perched on a rocky tabletop hill near Dresden, the Neuenstein Fortress or the Section Bastille in Saxon, Switzerland, Germany, overlooks the river Elbe. It's one of the largest fortresses in Europe and entails 4 centuries of history, built up over 50 buildings, including Germany's oldest preserved barracks, along with the sandstone walls up to 135 feet tall and a rampart of nearly 6,000 feet. The Saxon Bastille also has a 500-foot well in the center. Castillo de San Marcos, Florida. It is fitting that the oldest continually occupied European established city in the United States, St. Augustine, Florida, also has one of the nation's oldest and most unique forts. After attacks on the Spanish settled community endangered the residents, a star-shaped stone fort was built, the oldest masonry fort in the USA, moat that used a series of floodgates surrounded the walls, and an artificial slope added another touch to the 1600 builds fortification. Now located in downtown St. Augustine, the 2.5-acre fort remains a popular tourist destination. Area 51, Nevada. Sure, there are fences to keep you out, but this infamous stretch of Nevada wasteland isn't a fort in the sense of walls or moats. It's about psychological military fortification, and how desperately lots of people want to know what really happened here. The outlying test site associated with California's Edwards Air Force Base has been tied to all sorts of protection, and it has a powerful mental barrier and majestic surroundings. Area 51. And this is a Fort Independence, Massachusetts. When Europeans spotted what would be named Boston Harbor, the strategic military value was immediately obvious. First constructed in 1643, Fort Independence was constructed in granite on Castle Island in a star-shape full of cannons to protect the mainland. While multiple rebuilds reshaped the fort over the years, the allure of Fort Independence remains today. It is the oldest continually fortified site by the English in the United States. And this is a Fort Murud Zanjira, India. It is built on a rock island in the Arabian Sea near the coastal village of Murud. Fort Murud Zanjira is reachable only via the sea. With 21 bastions, the Indian fort was originally built in the 15th century but enlarged over time. The main gate remains hidden until those approaching the fort come within less than 50 feet of the island. Another gate stands on the opposite side of the island. And this is Jelgava Air Base, Croatia and Bosnia Herzegovina, one of the largest underground structures in Europe. The Jelgava Air Base is tucked underground along the border between Croatia and Bosnia Herzegovina, while monitoring airspace in Europe and offering an early warning system. The facility also served as a potential respite for nuclear attack. The Yugoslav wars ravaged the site, though, and it was trapped with landmines to prevent its potential future use. Next to it, the Gerald R. Ford class carriers US, scheduled for delivery to the US Navy in 2016, the Gerald R. Ford class aircraft carrier will replace both the Enterprise and Nimitz class carriers with its ability to operate with nearly 700 fewer crew. Technology upgrades include the first all-electric utilities on a carrier, eliminating steam service lines, a new reactor style, an updated aircraft launch system, fresh radar, and more. The Gerald R. Ford class will get planes into the air faster, run more efficiently, and strike more quickly. The Mansfield Forts, UK. These fortified towers poking up in the Thames and Mersey estuaries were built to protect England from German submarines. The forts also watched for submarines and housed anti-aircraft guns used throughout World War II. The small towers, grouped in 6 forts, were decommissioned in the 1950s, but many still remains. Today rising above the water level with rusted power and impressive intrigue. This is all about unconquered and unchallengeable things, fortresses and carriers of the world. Friends, thanks for watching.